You guys don't pass this up. Come on in. Chat. Camera is out of service. Won't open by voice tonight. We'll call it a podcast. Come on in. Chit chat. Big dog, you out there? Yo, yo. Don't pass this up. I know you're skipping through the shorts, but just stop. You don't see a video for a reason. Come on in, guys, gals. Man, boy, you must get my notification really fast. That was like super fast response. My camera is out of service. The cable broke last night, so I don't have any picture. But I ordered another one, and it should be here tomorrow, I think. So I'm calling it a podcast. You can come in and listen to my voice. How are you, Lynn? Is Lynn your real first name? Thank you for the thumbs up. Good, good. I asked you this before, but is Lynn your real first name? Can you hear me? Oh, it is. Oh, okay. So on your birth certificate, it's Brenna Lynn. Oh my gulai. As soon as you came in, girl. What's up, brother? As soon as you came in, girl, I hit the button and I logged myself off the stage. Hold on a second. Sorry, the music is too loud. Sorry. One second. Okay. There we go. Okay. They call you Aaron? Wait, you put E.Rin. Is that a typo? Aaron? Luke, what's going on? Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Well, no, you told me before, I think. because I said Aaron is a shortcut for Ireland. Yeah. Muy bien. Gracias, girl. Y tú. I don't, I am doing better than I deserve, Luke. Always. I don't have my camera tonight because the cable, the HDMI cable, uh, broke. I think the micro connector to my camera got stressed and got bent, and I couldn't get it to work. So I discarded it in the trash and ordered a new one. You're hitting the rack. Were you in the service, Luke, by any chance? And yeah, I did buy a new one, girl. Kason. Kason. I'm going to call it Kason. Kason shorts. What's up? Is that a girl or a guy? Kason. Long time ago, you were in the service? United States or what country? Oh, you're a guy. Okay, okay. Forgive me. And if you don't have a blue, the blue jacket, we call it, forgive me, but don't, I'm kind of limited tonight, and it's not easy for me to give moderator status. But if you want one, I can figure it out. Okay, Aaron. Oh, cool. Were you ever deployed, Luke? Joshua, Isan. Hang on, Josh. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to uh, try to share one of my stories over there in Iraq. I just started, and I don't have my camera, so I'm calling it a podcast until I get my cable replaced. I think it's coming tomorrow. Ah, that's where it's going. Okay. Well, I was wondering. I thought maybe you changed the address or something. So anyhow, um, now you know. Now we know. You went to Iraq in 2005. When were you there? What month? Do you remember? Of course you do. I was there in 2005. And I came home, though, in April. April 2005. May I ask, Luke, how old are you? Is that what you meant long time ago, 2005? I was thinking, a lot of people my age, maybe your age, uh, went to the Gulf War back in the, what is that, in the 80s. And, when they were a youngster. but it was a number of years ago when I was over there, 2004, 2005. So that makes it 20 years ago. Holy moly. I guess I still don't consider it how long it's actually been since I was over there. Yeah, praise God for the Army. We enjoyed some of their high-speed um, equipment that they left behind at our FOB, and then before we came home, they came on board and installed their high-speed showers for us. And we actually got to take running water showers for the first time in 7 months. That was pretty high speed. Are you guys still there? Josh, are you hanging in there? Luke, you still there? Ah, okay, so later in the year. Gotcha. Got there in January 2006. Well, kind of sounds like something like what I went through. Here's my story. I got deployed in March, let's see, or April, May of 2004, officially in May. And that's when it started. So found out I was a reservist, similar to yourself, being the National Guard, Navy corpsman or Navy medic. So I got my orders and found out I was being married up with the 123 Marines out of Houston, Texas. So they're in Texas, or they started their deployment in Texas. I'm in California at the time, Central California, when I got the phone call. So I get deployed, and it starts out by sending me to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina on the East Coast. So they fly me to North Carolina, and I begin the processing. They lose my paperwork, and there's like 3 classes that went through while I sat there for a month, literally for a month, until finally they discovered my paperwork, and I finally got on the way. And so now my unit in Houston, Texas has already progressed to 29 Palms, California, back to almost where I was living when I got deployed. So I'm on the East Coast, they're on the West Coast. Little do I know, though, at the time. So the next stop is send Gary to Houston, Texas to marry up with his unit. Well, they're not there anymore, but they flew me anyways. And I ended up staying 2 days in Houston, Texas. I contacted a friend in Galveston. I went sailing with him, actually, on his boat out in the bay, and stayed overnight on his sailboat. And then I eventually got back to the base where they sent me to 29 Palms, California. So I fly back to California, and I eventually married with my unit in 29 Palms. And that's where we officially introduced each other. Yeah, hang in there, Josh. I'm just practicing my gift of gab here. So that's where we officially met each other. Again, remember, I'm a reservist, so are they, and I don't normally work with them, so it's the first time meeting them and them meeting me. So they call me into a room, literally, with like 12 people sitting at a table, or tables, plural. And I'm sitting by myself in a chair out in front of them. And it's an interview basically, and they get to meet me because I'm that unknown corpsman that's going to deploy with them. So they introduce themselves, and there's everybody from commissioned officers to enlisted officers, and myself out in front. So I introduce myself, tell them I'm a former civilian paramedic as well as a Navy corpsman, and basically told them my story. And then they said, well, nice to meet you. And they all introduced themselves by name. No. I was a Navy corpsman, medical support for the Marine Corps. Anyways, I'm not quite familiar with. I'm assuming mechanized means like motor transportation, including anything that moves, mechanical, tanks, vehicles, etc. But anyways, so they begin to tell me after they introduce themselves what and where we're going. And they told me we're going to FOB Hit, Iraq, the considered to be the most heavily mortared and rocketed base in the theater. And they're telling me this, and I'm thinking, holy crap. Excuse me? The most heavily mortared and rocketed FOB in the theater? And they're like, yep. And they said, hey, if you're so many words, they said, I know this is a lot of information at once, and it's probably something you don't want to hear, but we didn't know either. And if you're as nervous as we are, well, they didn't say that particularly, but in other words, we're just as nervous as you are and concerned, and not knowing, never done this before. Most of them had never been deployed active. And so they just wanted to reassure me that you're not alone if you feel that way. But you're with us, and we're all in this together. And there's two things they're concerned about. Their two priorities is to make sure we do our job, and second, that we get home. And so after hearing them, kind of give a comfort speech, I felt a lot better that, I wasn't the only one feeling that way. So yeah, we spent like a month in 29 Palms, maybe just over a month. We ended up going over there at the end of August. God, I said I got the notification in June? I think it was June. Yeah, I might have been just over a month or almost 2 months. And the end of August is when we arrived in Iraq, Kuwait, and then from Kuwait to Iraq. Son of a gun, I keep clicking away from my... Yeah, wow, Josh. Well, cool. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. I didn't realize Luke and Josh, both, you guys are former military. Way cool. So glad. Maybe you saw my description. Awesome. And Creed? How about Creed Carter? Were you attached to a mechanized infantry unit? No. I was a Navy corpsman with the United States Marines. Or maybe you're asking Luke. Luke was Army. National Guard. Yeah, when it's nice and toasty. I'm going to read that again. First deployment, Kandahar, Afghanistan through Devil's Valley. Oh, what month was that? Because I arrived right at the end of the nice and toasty time of year. The last week of August, it was 113 when I arrived, or it got up to 113. I got a story to tell you. Well, I got lots of stories to tell you, but I ended up getting in trouble the very first 2 weeks of being, I think it was the first week of being there. Here I am, I'm 42 years old. I'm under the command of a 26-year-old Filipino guy because he's got more time and rate than I do. So officially he's above us. We're all over 40 except for him. And he's in charge, at least enlisted. And I ended up, of all things, and I know I'm gonna hear it from you guys. I ended up putting my 9mm on the deck while we were building some shelves and some reinforcements for the windows when we first arrived. We ended up occupying like this 3-building. I still don't know to this day what it was, whether it was a hospital or an apartment complex or whatever it was, but it was a 2-deck building, downstairs, upstairs. And we were pounding nails and sawing wood the first week, reinforcing the windows and sandbags and the whole 9 yards. I'm reading, Creed. I see that. Awesome. I'll post it up there. You're joining the Marines soon. Grandfather was a Green Beret. Awesome. Yeah, hold that thought. So I didn't square my 9mm holster, strapped around my leg. I'm a right-handed person, but I shoot left-handed. So my 9mm on my left leg. And the strapping that I had, I didn't square that away. And it every time I walked or went on a patrol, that thing was kind of flopping around and rotating on my leg into my groin, and it wouldn't stay put. So I hadn't figured that out yet, 100%. And so it was getting in my way while I was working. So what did I do? I took off the holster, the strap, and I set it down next to me so I could swing a hammer and kneel down. I didn't have an M16 at the time. They hadn't issued it to the corpsmen. But so I had my 9mm, and it was next to me, but it wasn't on me. And you can probably already guess what's going to happen. I ended up having to step away from my weapon. It was probably 8 feet to the left over there to get some nails. And when I came back, I turned around and I walked back. My 9mm was gone. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. How can a holster and straps and a weapon disappear that quick? And we were, we were in the FOB, and, all our guys were around us, and everybody's working, and there's noise and electricity, and pounding, and my weapon's gone. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. So of course I didn't say anything. I'm just like frantically looking around trying to figure out who's got it. And I couldn't find it. And then I started getting nervous, and I thought, holy crap, what am I going to do now? Well, my first class petty officer was right there. His last name's Arocha. His first name's Rudy. And I had to approach him in private in a whisper, and I said, Arocha, got a problem. Big problem. And he's like, what's up? And I told him what happened, and he's like, are you kidding me? And I said, no. He's like, you got to be kidding me. I said, no, dude, it's gone. So he walks with me back to where it was last seen, and we both are sitting there standing and looking and trying to figure out where it's at. And I just happened to raise my head up a little higher, up to the walkway there on the lower deck of the building, and first sergeant is standing there. What is that? E8? Something, I think so. And he's standing there looking at me with this smile on his face, and he's got his hands behind his back. And I thought, no way. And he's like, he looks right at me and he says, "Problem, Doc?" And I went, and immediately I knew, or I was hoping, he's got it, because he had his hands behind his back. And I said, "Yes, First Sergeant, please tell me you have it." And he brings it out from behind his back and he holds it up for me. And I went, holy, I knew I was relief, but at the same time I was in trouble. And he looks at me and he says, "You ever feel sandbags before, Doc?" And I went, "Nope." He goes, "Well, you're going to learn." And I went, holy crap. Yeah, I know, Josh. I found out the hard way. So in 113-degree weather in the morning, 10 o'clock, I don't know if it was that hot yet, but it got that hot. He brings me out to the sand pit behind the buildings, which they already designated as the sandbag area, with the shovels and the sandbags, and he demonstrated how full to fill a sandbag, leave room for the tie at the top. And then he says, "I want 50 of them, however long it takes, 50 of them. And when you're done, carry them over to the mortar pit. They're building their underground little fort." And I thought, got it. So at like 10 in the morning, I began my process. It took me 6 hours. And I went through lunch and dinner. And they brought me out lunch and they brought me out dinner. And I got to sit in the mortar pit underground in the cooler weather. And they had Gatorade on ice in a cooler. And I could take breaks whenever I needed it. He told me, "Don't overdo yourself, Doc. Whatever you got to do to get this done, get it done." And I said, "Okay. Roger that." So 6 hours later, I filled and carried 50 sandbags to the mortar pit, which was only about 50 yards, about 150 feet away. And I figured out how to get 2 sandbags on my shoulders simultaneously, so I didn't have to make any more trips than I needed to. But it kicked my butt, the heat and the labor. So that was, so that was my initiation to Iraq. Welcome to Iraq, Doc. There it was. So if you asked me to fill a sandbag today, 20 years later, I could do it for you. I remember. But even during war, Angel, Maanyong Bunta, or Maanyong Gabi here in USA. There was another moment, Josh. I'm kind of jumping back and forth because these stories bring up memories. I was on patrol. We were actually egressing out of the city of Heat. And we actually, here, ironically, this is so cool. Not cool, but at the same time, a good story. That same first sergeant that gave me that punishment at the beginning, he ended up getting injured during a patrol where we went out 3 platoons, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. I was with Charlie platoon. They're corpsmen. And as I was pumping double time to the 7-ton truck to get out of the city of Heat, we were starting to take on fire, just sporadic, smaller fire in the city, and everybody was double timing to get to the 7-ton, and the sunlight was starting to come up, and I hear my name being called, "Doc, MacKay." and I look to my right, and there's like two silhouettes walking towards me, and there's a corpsman and a Marine with his arm around his shoulder, and he's limping and hobbling towards me. And I hear the corpsman say, "MacKay, give me a hand." And I walk over there, and who do you think he's got around his shoulder? He's got First Sergeant, the same First Sergeant, and he's got a deep laceration to his scapula, his shoulder blade, and his calf muscle of his leg. And apparently, they're not sure if it was a mortar or what, but something exploded and the shrapnel hit him. So we ended up treating First Sergeant. I ended up actually, and the other corpsman treated First Sergeant, and then I ended up solo with him on the way back. Well, while I was in the back of that 7-ton with First Sergeant, my 9mm of all things ended up coming unfastened, the Velcro. The 9mm came out of my holster, but it was on a lanyard, the elastic lanyard, and it fell onto the 7-ton bed while we were moving. And I didn't realize this. And all of a sudden, another corpsman's like, "Doc," and he gets my attention, and he looks. I look over at him, and he holds up my 9mm, and he's like, "Dude," and I went, "What do you mean, dude? Give it to me." And he like giving me crap for my 9mm, and I said, "What's the lanyard for God's sakes?" I said, "Thank God for the lanyard, right?" I said, "Give it back to me. I don't need it taken away the second time." But it was that kind of stuff that was kind of irritating over there. It was like they're wanting to prove a point during war, and here I am treating First Sergeant, and we're in a dangerous situation, and he's wanting to give me his lip service while I'm sitting here. I got an injured person in front of him, so I finally got it back from him and secured it on my leg. But that was just another incident, that happened while we were over there. And there's more, actually. There was one more thing. I ended up getting in trouble again at the very end. I felt like I was 19 years old and I was 42. But it was my fault. The last punishment was my fault as well. I ended up being late for a muster. While we were in Kuwait. I can't believe I did that. I ended up being late for roll call with the whole battalion waiting for me. Holy moly. Can't believe it. So I ended up getting the work party punishment at the end, where we were loading all the sea bags and backpacks into trucks and airplanes while I had a torn rotator cuff. But that was okay, and that kicked my butt too. But I ended up flying first class on the way home to the United States in the first class section. And they even put me on guard in Germany. They assigned a military police, Marine Corps, to me solo while I was in the airport in Germany. Man, they watched me like a hawk. That's when I realized I was in trouble. The guy wasn't too humorous about it either. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Sucks to be you, Doc." And I went, "Holy moly." My superiors made sure that I felt the heat for that as well. So I didn't get to go into the what is it, the USO at Germany? Well, the other guys did. They sat out in the terminal hallway with a military police at my side, sitting there with me. But I got to fly, like I said, but I got to fly first class in the first class section on the way back. So I actually have photos underneath the coffee table of me sitting, recliner, my own TV. It was pretty cool. Let's see. I still remember riding through the valley and being ambushed on both sides of the mountains, taking a small arm, distinctly hearing ping sound bounce off the patrol vehicle. That sounds like uh, the the YouTube coverage, that video of the Korangal Valley. Did you see that one? That's when they were ambushed. Sounds like your story. They were coming back and they ended up getting ambushed on both sides and humping all the way back. I don't know if you saw that video or not. That was oh, you haven't, but yeah, it pretty much repeats what you just described. Yeah, I forget what it was. An army unit um, coming out of that valley. I believe they were coming out when they got ambushed, and of course they were in the bottom of a wash, and in the worst place they could be, ended up hiding behind rocks, trying to find rocks to seek cover, and having rounds pinging off the rocks. I forget what's the name of the video, but I'm sure you can find it. Yeah, I think it's the Korangal Valley, Afghanistan. Well, I'm obviously you made it home, and yeah, that was a while ago. My experience was pretty much we were just the worst it got was receiving incoming mortar and rocket fire. We averaged one every other day, and they were walking in their mortars and rockets, and eventually, they would get really close. But as you know, I'm sure, you know, anything that's an eighth of a mile or more close to where you are, if it's a 60 or 80 millimeter mortar, you're going to feel direct effects from it. And the barometric changes in the air, and the doors and windows being blown, and it almost, you think you're being hit directly by something, and then you get word after the fact that the impact was an eighth of a mile away, and we're all looking at each other saying, "Are you kidding?" Oh no, yeah, or more, you know, where they didn't hit our base directly, but the effects from it was, that great. And then there was one particular time when we got hit by 11 mortars, and they hit our base. I don't know how many of them actually hit the base. And the base, when I say base, I mean, don't think of a large base. Whoever put barbed wire around the perimeter, and the Marines figured out that if they ran around the perimeter 8 times, it was 1 mile. So an eighth of a mile, I was in an eighth of a mile round for 7 months. And they would just take pot shots at us, averaged every other day. at good old 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening while we were eating dinner or trying to eat dinner or in the shitter. And I had a personal experience being in the shitter when we got mortared and having that shitter almost rock over and me running out with my pants halfway around or down around my ankles, trying to get back to the building and, get back with my unit. And then on patrol, well, of course, or out on the road, if you're in a vehicle, you're, yeah, you're rolling the dice. And here, I'll just go right into a story. I was going to talk about this when I decided to start this live stream. They started getting shorthanded with corpsmen out and about in the field, the field corpsmen. So they came to the BAS, the Battle Aid Station for the Marine, basically the emergency room for us, medical, and they were looking, they were taking from Peter to pay Paul, grabbing corpsmen or and sending them out in the field, and we started getting kind of our population started to diminish out of the BAS, and then they decided to rotate us. There was like 4 of us left, and they decided to rotate us every patrol. So whenever they needed somebody to go out on patrol, it would be my turn, and then the next time it would be the next corpsman, and so on. And so like every 4 weeks, every month, it was your opportunity to go out on patrol with one of the platoons. So I went out. I was actually out like on a training patrol, and I accompanied another corpsman, and he was just showing me the ropes. So we're walking to the edge of the Euphrates River and back. And on the way, we walked past a range, a shooting range. We called it the ING range, the Iraqi National Guard range, where they did their practice. And we had our own in a different location. But that day I was on patrol, and we were going to go by the range and down to the Euphrates and then turn around and loop back to the FOB. And I have no, as you probably know, there's many times, most of the time, you don't know exactly where you're going or why. You just follow the next guy in front of you and do what you're told. So I had no idea why we were out there or what our purpose was. I was just going to follow another corpsman, and he was going to show me the ropes. So we're walking along, and we're approaching this ING range, and we're going to walk by it or through it. And where there's a kind of an uphill grade, a dirt road going up to it. And there's a file formation, one part of the platoon on the left side of the road, the other part of the platoon on the right side. And we're all spaced out about 30 feet or thereabouts. You know the drill. And I'm with the sergeant and the radio man. The radio man's with the sarge, and there's like 3 of us, and we were either walking on one side of the road or the other. And I'm walking in the footprints of the Marines in front of me. And they're telling me this. They're educating me. This is why we do that. If that boot print didn't step on anything, then it's okay for you to place your foot there. Well, I asked them, so why are we here? They went, nobody told you, Doc? And I said, no. And they said, we're out here looking for mines. And I said, we're what? He says, yeah, we're out here looking for mines. And so I started looking around for like somebody with a metal detector or something, and I don't see anybody with one. And I went, holy crap. And how are we supposed to do that? They said, just look for anything out of the ordinary, Doc. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. We're out here looking for mines, and we're just looking for things out of the ordinary. And they're giggling about it, of course. You know, they're younger Marines. And I thought, this sucks. So, yeah, and then they told me, yeah, just put your footprint in front of put your foot in the boot print of the Marine in front of you. And I was like, Roger that. If you think, the anxiety level increases 100%. So I'm walking along and you're literally putting your foot in the boot print of the Marine for you. And your head's on a swivel and you look behind, you know the drill. And all of a sudden, it's like we're turning kind of to the right. We're crossing a little dirt road. And I'm just following the footprints in front of me. And I went to put my left foot in the boot print in front of me, and I looked at it, and I went, what is a sprinkler head do in the middle of the dirt of Iraq? And you're trying to process this. And I'm looking around going, okay, where are we? There's no sign of society around me. I don't even see a mud hut. And I'm like, why is there a sprinkler head in the middle of the dirt? Because my brain's telling me that's one of those whirlybird, those pop-up sprinkler heads from Home Depot. And it was tan colored. And I thought, that's bizarre. That's out of the ordinary. And the boot print is going right over the top of it. And it's half uncovered. The Marine stepped right on it and kept going. And I'm looking at this boot print, and it's going right over the top of this sprinkler head. And it's like I said, it's half covered. It kind of looks like a half moon, a half circle, exposed, and the other half is under the dirt, under the sand. And I stopped, and I looked at the Marine behind. I turned around, and I held up my fist, and I stopped the Marine behind me, and he looks at me, and he stops. And I'm looking at the Marine in front of me. He's still got his back to me. And eventually he turns his head around and he sees me, and I stopped him. And they both almost simultaneously said, "What do you got, Doc?" And I'm looking at him, shaking my head back and forth, going, "I don't know." And I'm pointing at the ground. So they stop everybody, like an accordion, and everybody eventually stops. And the two Marines turn around and they walk in the footprints of their own back to me. And they're like, "What do you got?" I'm pointing at the ground. And the guy looks at me like, "Whoa." He goes, "Just stay where you are, Doc." And I went, "Roger that." I'm not moving. And he gets out his K-bar and he starts digging around in the sand around it. And I'm getting really nervous at this point. And I thought, guys, I stopped him. I said, "Guys, please stop." I said, I need to get out of here before you start doing any more digging. I said, "Can I please just leave?" And they're like, "Roger that, Doc." And I kind of stepped over it into the next boot print, and I precariously walked the whole time. And I got about 100 yards away from them, and I was like, "Go ahead, guys, do whatever you need to do." And to say I was nervous was an understatement. And I realized what that might be. And sure enough, it turned out to be a vehicle mine, not a personnel mine. And we figured out that's why the Marine didn't set it off. It's because we learned later by EOD that it took like 200 pounds or kilograms or whatever, kilograms, to trigger that thing. And the Marine didn't weigh enough. It turned out to be a vehicle mine. And the scuttlebutt, the rumor traveled quickly that Doc found a mine. And so that was my claim to fame while I was over in Iraq, was Doc found a mine. And I was like, unbelievable. There was a burnt out chassis of a Humvee about 100 feet to my left. And it turned out that that Humvee had hit one of those vehicle mines prior to us getting there. That is, prior to our battalion occupying FOB Hit. And another Humvee had struck a vehicle mine, and it burned to the ground, and the chassis was left over. And I apparently found another vehicle mine in the general vicinity of that chassis. So we ended up hanging out for like 3 hours, just, up against our backpacks, sitting in the dirt, however far away, while EOD was deployed, and they got there about 3 hours later or thereabouts, and they ended up disarming it and disassembling it and kind of giving us an in-service. Okay, here's the explosive charge, here's the pin, here's the plastic mine. And the reason why it's very seldom to detect these things, because the trigger mechanism is made of aluminum, and there's not a whole lot to it, and sometimes the metal detectors don't pick it up because the plate itself is plastic. Anyways, they ended up detonating it, so we got a fireworks display to watch while they blew it up. And then they took the shell of it, the plastic shell of the mine, and actually mounting it on a plaque and put an engravement underneath it, or one of those metal strips with the major, the officer that injured when that Humvee exploded. And they extricated him out and then presented him with that plaque with the plastic plate on it, saying, a mine is a beautiful thing to waste. Ha ha ha. And then it was Major, or whatever his rank was. You'd use the water buffalo to do sweeps for the IEDs? What do you mean? You mean you would push the water buffalo out in front of the vehicle? How did you use the water buffalo? Because we had a water buffalo, on the fob for drinking and to fill our wash stations that we had set up, after you got out of the shitter. And that was part of the corpsman's peripheral duties, was to keep the water bags filled. And to fill our water bottles, to take water bottle showers. But how did you use the water buffalo to do sweeps for IEDs? And as any story is a good story when you're deployed, as far as like entertainment, either watching movies at night, if you have an opportunity to do that, or just telling stories or getting letters. And so when I got back, I got to tell my story, and everybody was like, entertained by Doc found a mine. But it tells a good campfire story. But as in the moment, it sucks. It's a helpless feeling being out there, isn't it, Josh? I mean, you know your job and you know your weapon and you know what you do well and you do it well. But there's some things you just have no control over. And that's an example, like driving. Driving over there, it's the worst place to be. Big metal detector on the front of the Buffalo. Ah, yeah, yeah. I remember. I never got to firsthand experience with those vehicles, but I saw the examples of those um, contraptions or whatever you want to call them that they used out in the front of the vehicles to hopefully detonate the IED and not blow up the vehicle that it's attached to out in front of the vehicle. Was the Buffalo filled with water when it was being used? Does that help absorb the blast? I would imagine if it's filled with water. Yeah, plus the V shape under the vehicle. Right, right, right. Yeah, I remember that. And remember, we even experienced this. Remember the vehicles not being equipped to to combat these blasts and or small arms fire. So they ended up welding plates onto the doors of the Humvees. We did that. I remember. Well, I didn't, but the Motor Transportation Division, they were all over that. But all in all, I say it was relatively safe. But then again, we had 101 mortars, 50 rockets, one VB IED at the very end. That was something. And it detonated itself out at the gate, out at the entrance to the fob. Ended up killing the the guy was driving the vehicle and didn't kill anybody else, injuring some Iraqis. I ended up treating them. No, we kept the water in the convoy truck, third from the front. We couldn't risk losing the water. Oh, okay. So I gotcha. So yeah, everybody had their job, and I was assigned what the field, though those out in the field, such as yourself, would call, being spoiled. And I was back at the FOB in a building, so I was relatively safe, I guess you could say. Um, Although we were sitting ducks for the mortars, and that's what caused the excitement, if you want to call it, for us. And you learn the the sound, the launch of a 60 compared to an 80, so you could tell if you heard the launch of what was coming, whether it was coming at you or not. You have no idea until it hits, and the rocket whistled, and that just means that it went over your head. So that gives you like a second of warning. That doesn't give you any time to do anything but just listen to it. It gives that kind of over your head. So it just gives you something to talk about after the fact. That was definitely a rocket. I heard the whistle. Well, how old are you now, Joshua? 20 years later. Oh my gosh. Just the tires on the trucks were amazing. You're 45. Okay. Well, check this story out. I don't know if you ever had anybody working with you that was like myself. I was going through a chapter of my life where I ended up in New Orleans, Louisiana, chasing a woman, chasing a girl. And I ended up coming home from Louisiana in 1998. Because of this lady that I was chasing, she came home one day when I was in Louisiana with some brochures on this military recruitment program called APG. I was born in 62. I'm 61 now. I'll be 62 in August. 0KW. So in 1998, I was back. I ended up leaving, getting away from Louisiana, thank God. And I ended up back in California, and I was with my tail between my legs at 36 years old. After going through 8 months of psychiatric warfare in Louisiana with this lady. I was still a paramedic. I worked as a paramedic in Louisiana, St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I was living at my mom's house as a temporary place of residence till I figured out where I was going to go and what I was going to do. So eventually I started submitting my resume, and I found a job as a paramedic. And in the process, I had this paperwork or these brochures that this woman had brought home that day. And it was about this APG program, advanced pay grade for civilians. And come to find out that this type of program has been available in the military since World War II, where they take your civilian experience, whatever it is you. If you're a mechanic, an auto mechanic, they could put you in the mechanized unit and help you repair vehicles, or in the motor transportation division with the Marines and do the same. If you're a construction worker, they can make you they can bring you in as into the construction battalion with the Navy, CB unit, the letter CB. They call them the CBs, etc. If you're a paramedic in the civilian unit, they can bring you into the Army as a medic, or they can bring you into the Navy as a corpsman. Well, I ended up taking this information, and I walked into a recruiter's trailer in San Diego, California, and I asked them about this APG program, and they filled me in, and they did their best to bring me on board. I went to the Army side of the trailer the first time, or the first place I went into. The first door I opened was the Army recruiters door, and they asked me, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a paramedic," and they went, "Oh, we can make you a medic." And I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you very much." And he did his best to recruit me, but I wasn't gonna do that and anytime right then. And then I went across the hallway to the Navy side, and they asked me, so what do you do? And I said, I'm a paramedic. And they, oh, we can make you a corpsman. Oh, all right. Thank you very much. So I went home with this information, and to make a long story shorter, I ended up signing on the dotted line in a Denny's restaurant in front of a Navy recruiter who was like 15 years my junior. He was like 23 years old, and I was 36 years old. And I became a Navy corpsman at 36 years old in the Navy Reserves in 1999, 2 months before my 37th birthday, which was at the time the cutoff age for the military, 37 years old. Today, it's 5 years more. It's 42. So you can become a military member at 42 years old, do 20 years, and retire at 62. When I signed on, it was 37. You could do 20 years and retire at 57. Well, I signed an 8-year contract at 37 years old, and my EOS was 1999 to 2007. 99 plus 8 is 2007. And that's when I got out. I got out in 2007. I chose not to do 20 years because the scuttlebutt was that I was going to be deployed to Afghanistan with the 123 Marines, the same unit that I went to Iraq with, to Afghanistan. And when I heard that, I said, you know what? It's time to go. So I let my EOS expire in 2007, June 2007, and I separated from the Navy after doing 8 years. Did Iraq scare me? Sure it did. And hence the reason why I didn't want to go back to Afghanistan. I was a new daddy. My wife was 8 months pregnant when I got home. I knew that throughout the whole deployment. She sent me ultrasounds when she found out she was pregnant. Shortly after arriving in Iraq, I was 42 years old when I EOS'd out of the Navy. And I realized, you know what? This is a young man's game, a young single man's game. And I didn't want to be in Afghanistan next. So, yeah, that was my story. That's how I ended up in the Navy and I got out of the Navy. I was 45 actually in 2007. Yep, 45. I was born in 62. So I was an old guy over there. I was 42. And I got out as a E5. Petty officer, second class. Yeah, I would have retired if I had done you as well, Josh. God is good. He put together an amazing military, an amazing U.S. military, and because of it, I understand a lot more about the United States and why we are what we are, and why we have what we have. And I told people in the last live stream I did just yesterday, actually, last night, don't worry about why we are deployed and where we're deployed. The United States military is going to be deployed no matter who's in office, whether it's peacetime or at war. And most of us signed up for this job, unless there's a draft, but otherwise we're the ones that signed up for it. So, it's nobody's it's not the government's responsibility that we deployed. It's our own doing, and nothing's going to stop us from being deployed, and we're going to get deployed no matter what. So I encourage people that are not in the military to support the military and congratulate them and welcome them when they get home. and do everything you can to support them, whether it's sending a message or a card or a gift or a package. Believe you me, that means, as you know, Josh knows and I know, anything that resembles home while we're there is so welcome that it means the life to us. When we receive a package, with a from our loved one or from a friend, that's some of the best times while we're over there, is when we receive packages and letters. Ah, I'm almost getting emotional talking about it. It sucks being over there. It's the most worrisome time of a person's life. Just being deployed, being in harm's way is not is not a good thing for anybody. But to send a gift or a package, oh my gosh. You know what? This is where I'm going to laugh about this or smile about it more than anything. We used to sit, and as you'll relate to this, Josh, we used to just sit there together at night, whether we're watching a DVD video on somebody's DVD player, or if we were in a building, if somebody had a TV, that was a godsend. That was like being in a theater watching a DVD, a movie on a DVD player. But we used to talk about what it was like, what it would be like to sit on a white porcelain toilet seat, and how wonderful that must be. I couldn't believe we were talking about that. But when someone said that, I'm like, heck yeah. Ah, wouldn't that be cool to just sit on a white porcelain toilet seat? I don't know about you, but that was one of my peripheral duties. Yeah, you do. Until you don't have it. Yeah, desert, eating MREs and not being able to take a poop. Yep. Oh my gosh, how many times did you put your head down at night when you got to go to sleep and think of your family, or think of your loved one, or if you were married, or when you're writing a letter back home? Or if you had a chance to be in we called it the MWR, or Marine Welfare and Recreation, where you got to sit and actually type on a laptop or get on a landline and speak to somebody back home. Yep. It was nice to be able to think of those things, but at the same time, as it was like, ah, it just made you, it almost made the anxiety come back. It was comfort, but at the same time, then you had to forget about it. And God forbid you got incoming while you were talking on the phone, or, if you even had a chance to talk on a phone. Been there, did that. I had to hang up right in my wife's face so that she didn't hear what was going on. And then give them or lie to them as to what happened to the connection. Oh, sorry about that. Bad connection. Yeah, I remember getting an opportunity to call home, and my actually no, sorry. When I got home, in 29 Palms. My mom and my son and my brother were there to greet me. And my mom, after you're talking, about at dinner or whatever, wherever they took me, them telling me about, oh my gosh, I remember hearing about that helicopter that went down in the Al Anbar province and killing 30 people. And they couldn't help but wonder if I was on board that. And it was a Navy, a Marine Corps helicopter. I don't know if you remember that. It was prior to 2005, 2004, when those 30 service members were killed in a helicopter that went down. And we heard about it at the FOB, of course, not knowing that my mom was fretting at home, wondering if she was going to get word, that my name was on that helicopter. Yeah, let me love reading your comments here. Or like me, being out on patrol with an MRE meal, ran out of water, had to borrow some from my brother, gave him some beef jerky back at the base. Love it. See, even stories like that, just some simple stories. You don't hear these stories on media, on news. I tell people that. What about Josh's story? When he was out on patrol with it, trying to eat an MRE and he ran out of water. So he borrowed some from your brother. You were deployed with your brother? He gave him some beef jerky back at the base. I know, stuff like that. What about Tabasco? Whoever had Tabasco, you end up trading for Tabasco so you could put it on your, or M&Ms. Or what about the fig bars? Or they weren't fig bars. They were, what were they? They're like those brownies. The brownies? Oh my gosh. If you got the MRE with the chocolate brownie in it, holy moly. But as you know, the medics and the corpsmen, yeah, Tabasco was live. Absolutely. What part of my job as a medic, as a corpsman, was to make sure you guys were healthy. So it included, as we're always on you about drinking water. How much water have you drinking? How much water? You've been drinking plenty of water? You come to us with a complaint of a headache. What's the first thing we ask you? How much water you been drinking? The number one cause of a headache is dehydration. And so we're always asking you. And making sure your hygiene is correct. Did you wash your hands? When's the last time you washed your hands? Or, I was thinking of, the MREs. Make sure you drink that, you eat your MREs with water. Oh my gosh, so much water that I threw up and drank more. I know. What color's your piss, Josh? Yep, I was one of them. What color's your pee? Yep, clear. But it's the truth, though. It was a problem, even for me. It's like you're always trying to just drink water. Drink water. Man, if you don't have water, water's life. Tabasco's life, too. Yeah, what was your favorite MRE? I can remember mine was, it was more like the pasta, the chili, the chili and pasta, or anything that had to do with pasta. Goulash or What was the other one? Or the stew, the beef stew. Those things were good to go. Yeah, I was saying the media only covers, the, they just cover what makes a story. Oh, meatballs. Oh, dude, with brownies. Yeah. They got pretty creative, with the Tabasco and the what were the bread? Those two thin um cake or whatever those bread pieces were in the foil pack, and you could put your meatballs on them, or and then smother it with Tabasco. Make a meatball sandwich or something. Yeah, those oversized saltine crackers. Exactly. Oh, they did have those sponge cake pouches, right? With the sponge cake in them. That was like dessert. Yeah. Did you ever try the scrambled eggs? They're not bad actually as a breakfast for an MRE. Did you ever get a chance? I didn't see them over there, but I did get a chance from a Marine sniper. It was like at his home. Maybe I wasn't. This was before I was deployed. Some guy had some leftover MREs, and he actually gave me a breakfast. It was scrambled eggs. I was like, you know what? For in the field, this was pretty good to go. It was like dehydrated scrambled eggs, but you added water and then put it in the. I was like, you know what? That's not bad. Yeah, powdered eggs. Exactly. Yep. For being out in the field, I was pretty impressed. Yep. I was like, I could dwell on this in the morning. And then if you got a chance to actually be back at the base or the FOB, and I don't know if you ever got hot meals, that were prepared and served. Of course, being on a base, that's the biggest, I think, difference was we actually got to line up when the Marines weren't out on patrol and weren't able to get a hot station and heat stuff up. You know uh, those meals uh, put on those steamers, over the sterno fire things, or they actually got to. They had this. Uh, they had this like this kitchen on wheels inside of a tent. It had wheels where they transported it, and they actually unfolded like a black grill, this giant grill where they could make hash browns and sausage and fried eggs or scrambled eggs, and then put it in those warmers and put it in a tent, and everybody line up and you actually get a hot meal. Yeah, those mobile pop-up kitchens. Yep, yep. Yeah, we definitely got to get spoiled on with that. Means we're back on base and we were bowing to the chefs, to the cooks. I mean, I was bowing just to the whole food, the ability to provide food for us over there, whether it was an MRE and finding out the logistics of getting all that stuff over to Iraq or Afghanistan and getting it to us. I kind of got to, since I was on base, I keep calling it, it's like whenever I say base, people get this picture that I was actually on giant base, and it wasn't. It was, yeah, yeah. Um, it was a spot on the map. You can find it. You can go to Google Earth, and I don't know if you can actually type in FOB Heat, but it's right on the edge of the Euphrates River on one of the bends, and you can zoom right in on the buildings that I slept and occupied. I find it to this day. I did it here not too long ago. Still there. Still U-shaped buildings sitting in the middle of the dirt. But anyways, yeah, I got an opportunity to uh, walk around and visit some of the other departments that were occupying the room at this FOB. And one of them was the CCC, the communications, and the other one was, I forget what the name of it. There was actually a kind of a private room that the secret stuff went on in that room over there. They actually had a sign on it that said, if you enter without permission, you'll get shot. Ha ha ha. But it was whatever the you didn't need to know stuff went on over on that part of the base or the building. And then there was another room where all the not communications, but it was like the logistical stuff where they're communicating by computers to do the ordering and logistical stuff. I got to visit that room and see kind of, there was one corpsman that I kind of shadowed, and he was more privy to the going on of, that went on in a FOB, and he took me and he showed me, some of the other departments or the other rooms and what went on in there, and who to buddy up with so you could get access to certain things, like the cooks. Become friends with the cooks. Fringe benefits. Yeah. Mine was a spot on the map. You can imagine. If you walk around or run around the barbed wire 8 times, it was 1 mile. That's how small the perimeter of the FOB was. The Marines figured it out. You know how they are with their physical fitness. They're either lifting weights or running, doing pull-ups, sit-ups, pumping iron. They had a weight room. Well, that was kind of whatever they could make of a weight room. Yeah, what was your FOB or base if you had the opportunity to return to it? Was there anything nearby in Afghanistan? I said earlier at the beginning, thank God for the Army, because as you know, the Army is where the research and development, a lot of the research and development for the military, for all services, all branches. And the shower at the very end of the deployment, 2 weeks before we went home, the Army showed up on the base and set up their showers. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. They had walk-in, pop-up tent showers with recycled running hot and cold water. Gotcha. Yeah, we were 30 30 miles, 20 miles from Al Assad base, the air base that we took over. Al Assad. You've heard about that on the news. Yeah, it was a Iraqi air base, and it had the blown out bunker buildings with the I was told the um, giant holes in the rooftop from the cruise missiles, from the U.S. cruise missiles hitting these. Well, they're not bunkers. The 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 air buildings for for the aircraft on the base. They had giant holes in rebar open with this big old 20-foot hole in the top of the where we kind of staged when we first got there, and they unloaded all the sea bags and the backpacks before we got assigned, before we got motored into FOB Heat. I think it was 40 miles. We were 40 miles from FOB Hit, from the Al Assad base. And then the other part of our battalion was at the Hadith Dam. And that was like a 20 miles. What's it, 20 miles from FOB Heat? I don't know. I forget the mileages, but 300 of us, approximately 300 of us were at FOB Heat. The other 300 were at Haditha Dam. And we did rotate to Haditha Dam for just a few days during the deployment, but it was kind of temporary. While they did a mission, we occupied Haditha Dam. And then we went back eventually. So. Cinder blocks stacked 5 feet high around the base, filled with sandbags behind it. Yep. What about the HESCO? Remember the HESCO barriers filled with dirt? Did you have those? I think that's the name of them, right? HESCO barriers. You fill them with dirt. That's what we did. It was those wire, reinforced wire squares about 6 feet high or 5 feet high, and you filled them with dirt. Yeah, that was it. Well, that's what I saw the most over there. We had HESCO barriers around our buildings and sandbags, around the doors and stuff. But for the bigger barriers were the HESCO barriers filled with dirt. And we used those reinforced, I don't know what you want to call them, the framing for the HESCO barrier, also to fill with water bottles. And we had those barriers filled with water bottles and or supplies from Johnson and Johnson, like razor blades and wipes and all of the above, toothpaste, toothbrushes, and oh my God, they were coming out of our ears. The never-ending supply of hygiene material at these FOBs. It was never-ending. And snack crackers, peanut butter crackers, garlic-filled cheese crackers, peanuts. Oh my gosh. The constant battle of trying to keep your poop soft. Josh, I mean, I know anybody that gets killed, is not a good deployment. But out of 600 Marines and corpsmen, Navy corpsmen, we lost 4 people during that 7 months. 2 of them was from a motor accident, a head-on collision between a Mercedes-Benz and a Humvee killed 2 of our Marines, and the other 2 was from a hitting an IED in a Humvee, and it you know tore the Humvee apart and killed the driver and passenger, and then yeah, that was the other 2. So out of 600 people, or there about 600 people, we lost 4 people. And then the next unit that relieved us, it was I think the 2nd Marine 5th Battalion 25, I think that's there. Um, they were also a reserve unit out of Ohio, I think. Don't quote me on that. They ended up losing 40, 42, 45 people. And when we heard that, I was just devastated. I thought, oh my God, what happened? Here we are, we spent 7 months and we lost 4 people. And then we find out that the next unit that relieved us lost 45 people. That was devastating. I remember the corpsman that shadowed me. He literally, it was pretty profound to experience his body language when he first arrived. He had never been deployed active, in a war zone, just like I had not been. 8 got us out of 150. There you go. You see that? Isn't that amazing? I mean, I think about, one person, one chief, what is that? That's E7. I ran into during my deployment. He came through the base or something, or through the FOB, I should say. And I talked to him about that, finding that pressure plate. And he's like, dude, you need in for, and I forget the metal or something. And I went, really? And he's like, absolutely. Think about it. How many people did you save by finding that pressure plate? And I never was recognized for that, but I didn't think about it. I didn't push it or anything, but he's like, heck yeah. So you experience first on, what a vehicle hitting a pressure plate does. Turned out to be, I remember them telling me it wasn't it was Italian. Was it Italian? It was an Italian vehicle mine. Italian? Or wherever it came from. The C5, it wasn't C5 or C4 explosive. It was from some other foreign country. They figured out. I don't know if it was Italy or somewhere else. But what would that have done if a vehicle had filled up? I mean, ran over that pressure plate. There you go. 2-liter bottles, rusty nails, metal objects to rip through us. Unbelievable. Yeah. I remember taking the class back at Camp Lejeune, and then given us videos, and we were watching, the different ways that they improvised IEDs and putting them inside dead animals and everything. People, anything, trash, 2-liter bottles, Oh, check this out, Josh. Check this story out. This is kind of just another story to talk about. Um, we ended up having stray feral dogs, a pack of them that were starting to pester or show up at our fob, our trash. We had two pits. Apparently, I don't know if the Army dug them or the Marines did, but they used, their heavy equipment to dig holes in the ground for the dump and for the gray water, for the sewage. We had two overseas foreign workers working with us. One guy from Albania, the other guy from Yugoslavia. And they both emptied the trash and or the shitters and used their, those trucks that with the big hose and stuck them down in the shitters and sucked out all the waste. And they went to this other gray water hole and emptied that stuff and then let it evaporate. The trash, the dump, they burned that. And they would dump kerosene on it, burn it on a periodic basis throughout the deployment. So we always had this glow at night, which we always talked about was like a target for the guys to launch mortars at. The glow of FOB Hit. And the gray water, which was next to the dump. Well, this pack of dogs, feral dogs, everything from a looked like a mangiated poodle to a German Shepherd were in this pack of dogs, and there was like 5 or 6 of them, and they'd show up at our trash, and they would end up. I never saw them, but they were getting too close to the living quarters. So the word ended up reaching us and our commanding officer, who was a neurosurgeon from Bossier City, Louisiana. And get this, he's only 3 years older than me. Here I am, 42. He was 45, and he's making like $3 million in the civilian world. And he took he even told us he was making like $500,000 a year by deploying with the Marines, from 3 million to 500,000. Taking that much cut and pay. But he volunteered for it even. He wasn't even deployed. He volunteered. He wanted to go. So he came out with us anyways. And he was the one that had to make the decision to what to do with this pack of feral dogs. And so he devised a operation, and he called it Operation Fido. No kidding. I swear. So we had Operation Fido. Let me read your comment. We kept our burning down to a minimum, not to compromise position. So we dug deep holes, let it burn 5 minutes, put it out. Gotcha. Amazing. That's cool. So the word got out that Operation Fido was going to go down on a certain day at a certain time. And they were literally going to gun down this pack of dogs. I was like, oh my gosh, can you imagine the scuttlebutt circulating around the FOB? And everybody was wanting to be part, to watch this, including me. And now the corpsmen got to go up on the rooftop to the OPs and make sure the Marines holding post, didn't get too cold during the night, which, as being in Afghanistan, it got butt cold during the night, freezing, below freezing, and made sure they didn't, they had hot something or hot coffee or tea or and brought them food or snacks, and we even brought them sleeping bags to put their feet in so they didn't freeze balls. And so that was we kind of did 4-hour shifts, to go up and check on the guys at the OP. Well, anyways, those guys on the rooftops is where these guys were going to take the position to gun down these dogs during Operation Fido. So, there was like a first sergeant. It wasn't the first sergeant that got hurt. It was another. No, he was a staff sergeant. Staff sergeant? No, gunny. Called him a gunny. That's right. Gunny got to take part, and I think a sniper, some other sniper, and they took position on this one building and waited for these dogs to come in at dinner time around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they just opened up on these dogs. And I was on the rooftop watching, and I was like, oh my gosh, these dogs were yelping and running for their lives. They just scattered, and they ended up killing 2 out of 6 of them. I think 5 or 6 of them. The rest of them got away. Oh my gosh, they just had a heyday. Well, they ended up killing the German Shepherd and some other smaller dog. And I volunteered, or somebody recruited me to go out there with them and recover the dogs and drag them to the dump so we could burn them. So that was my job. And I got to I got to see the devastation through and through the German Shepherd. And his rib cage was exploded, and it looked like a rack of ribs with fur on it as we recovered his dog parts and drug them over to the dump. Oh my gosh. Yeah, 114 during the day, 50 at night. That was during the hot season, as you know. And then as soon as summer broke, we experienced 75-degree days and 28-degree nights. And that was, we actually deployed on the road in the morning in that freezing cold weather. And I eventually looked online, and with the wind chill doing 45 miles an hour in the back of a 7-ton, it got down to 7 degrees. Was it 7 or 14? 14 degrees in the back of the 7-ton. And these, I got a story. I wrote about it on a blog's website of these Marines so cold that they couldn't even function their hands, their fingers. They were frozen, and they were holding their M16s with their wrists. And they were cyanotic around their lips and the tips of their nose and the tips of their ears were starting to turn blue in the back of these 7-tons. And I was like, oh my God, what are they? This is horrible. And they're like, oh, you get used to it, Doc. And because I got to deploy with them when we were going to Haditha. And I was in the back of this 7-ton, and I was grunting hard, really hard, trying to put up with just the half an hour trip to the Haditha Dam in the back of the 7-ton. And they're like, oh, you get used to it, Doc. And I was like, this sucks really bad. Couldn't even feel your feet. Fingers were useless. And they're just in the back, they're huddled together. I don't know if you got to do this. We're all sitting in each other's laps in 2 rows in the back of these 7-tons, all leaning back on each other. Just, they're freezing us. And the bumps in the road, oh my gosh, it felt like it launched your spine through your scalp. Here's another one of your comments. We kept burning. Oh, that was the same one. Sorry. Yeah, that was when we arrived, was 113, and then that cold. And then when, like I said, when that season changed, we actually experienced sandstorms and rain. Were you able to have hot packs with you, or trigger finger or lost for toes were most important? Yeah, I don't remember hot packs. I'm sure the guys out in the field did what they do to. They must have had them, but I didn't. I say fortunate, but unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to become party with you guys out in the field, on a regular basis. There was another part of our corpsmen that did get assigned to the mechanized part of the unit, and they were out on the road most of the deployment, and that was their experience. They were either in a Humvee or a track vehicle, or what are those vehicles with the 6 wheels on them? 3 on each side for transport, and were they armed? M16 on top or something? Some of them had a 20 millimeter. Do you know, Josh, I had a near drowning. That was another one of my stories I wrote about. I had a near drowning in the middle of Iraq. Go figure. How in the heck did that happen? Where did he drown? Where's there water enough to drown? Well, we found some. And a Marine decided to fall into it, and he sunk. If we were getting to firefights right at dinner time, I use warm gun barrel to stay warm. Love it. That's awesome. I think. Thank God for the warm gun barrel. Good Lord. See, you don't hear any of this on media. This kind of stuff needs to be talked about. People need to hear this kind of stuff. It just puts people in awe. Like, what do people do? What do human beings do in order to survive? And that's what we do. We use the warm gun barrel after a firefight. Unbelievable. Well, let me tell you about this near drowning. This was just simply amazing, and I wrote about it. I'll type the name of the blog spot. You can go there and check out some of the stories I wrote about. It was after action. I was encouraged to do when I got back. But it's Illusion Dweller. Did I spell illusiondweller.blogspot.com, and Illusion Dweller. It's an old website, but I've got kind of an unkept blog that I started and wrote all these stories and added some videos of various things, including the military aspect of my deployment. But that's the blog spot, and I'll tell about one of the things I wrote about. Again, they got shorthanded with corpsmen out in the field on patrol. So we rotated, and we got an opportunity to go out, and I told about the sniper patrol that I went out on with 2 snipers. That was pretty cool. That was a first and only opportunity I got to do that. And another one was doing a foot patrol through the city of Heat. And we were about 6 or 8 miles from the FOB Hit is like 6 or 8 miles from the city. So we drove into the city, and at this particular patrol was organized. They organized it, kind of rehearsed it, went through some choke points that they figured they might encounter and what to do, and how to get through that and so on. There on the base, and we did a little run through a couple of times. And I was part of that, since I was going to be the corpsman, or one of the corpsmen with the Charlie platoon. Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie went on this patrol, and I was with Charlie platoon. I was, the corpsman, the only corpsman. And I had a interpreter with me. I had the ex-Iraqi pilot. His name was Safwan, Safwan. Way cool. He had a polished, a chrome AK-47 that he carried with him and kept immaculate when he was in his room back at the FOB. He looked like Tom Selleck, and when he was back in his hooch, he would wear his perfume, his cologne, and it was always present in the room whenever he walked in, along with his Playboy and pornographic pictures he had plastered all over his walls and his ceiling. Who says Muslims don't view porn? So anyways, Safwan was with me, and we got inserted about, I don't know, a mile or so from the edge of the city, out in the middle of the dirt at like 3 o'clock in the morning, dark 30, and we just went into a file, two file formation across the dirt, and it was relatively flat, and I just remember it went downhill, and then at the bottom of this hill, kind of a rocky hill, I remember some guys tripping and falling, and all of a sudden it was pitch black. The point guy had NVG, the Sarge had NVG, and the guy in the rear had an NVG, but none of the rest of us had night vision. And so I remember reaching out and holding on to the blouse of the guy in front of me at times, just to know where I needed to go next, because it was just, you were blind. And people tripping and falling and getting up, and I just remember all that noise and grunting every now and then of guys falling. And then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, my boots are starting to get heavy, and I could hear the squish in the water, and I thought, what in the world, where are we walking? And mud started to build up on our boots. And you know how the mud gets so caked on the bottom of your boot that you're literally walking on a rounded mound of mud, and you can barely keep your balance, and you're trying to drag your feet and get the mud off of it. After a while, it was just it was futile. We're in the mud, and this mud is like all the way up almost to the top of your boot, and you can barely get your foot out of the mud, your boot out of the mud. And I thought, this sucks. I mean, this is really bad. You can't even walk. And people were just struggling to get through this stuff. And then it started to get like water. Now the mud is more water, which actually made it easier because now we could walk and your boot wasn't getting stuck. But now the water is up and over your boot, and it's just flooding your boot. And now the water's up to your knees. And I thought, what are we walking through? Why are we here? How are we going to defend ourselves if something were to happen? We're out in the middle of the water. And now we're up to our thighs. The water was literally up to the middle of my thighs. And we're all of us are walking through this. And I thought, you know what, as a corpsman, this is part of my responsibility to, make sure these guys are okay. So I decided to take it upon myself to do something about it. So what could I do? All I could do was try to find somebody that I could speak to and wonder and ask, what are we doing? Where are we going? And why are we here? So I went up to the point guy. I probably shouldn't have. I'm always told not to leave the radio guy and the sarge, but I ended up leaving him, and I went to the front of the pack, and it was a corporal. I remember his last name, Linan, Linan, and he had NVGs, and I'm like, Nan, where are you going, dude? He's like, I'm just pushing forward, Doc. I'm just pushing forward. And I'm like, what? He says, he's pointing to his headset. He's got an earpiece and he's pointing to his headset. And he's like, they're telling me to keep pushing, keep pushing. I said, where are you pushing to? He's like, I don't know, Doc. I'm just going to keep going till I get there. And to the city? He's like, yeah. And I thought, dude, this is bad. Where are we going? It's getting horrible. The water just keeps getting deeper. He's like, I know, Doc, but they're telling me keep pushing, keep pushing. And I'm like, wait a minute, stop for a second, just stop. And he's like showing me his map. He puts his red light on his map, and he's showing me, show me where you're going. He's like, I'm trying to get here, and I'm going to turn right, and I'm going to get over to that road, that choke point that we were, supposed to gain access to the city. I was like, okay, so you got to go right? He's like, yeah. He says, but I want to get here first. And it's like a dark line on the map. And I don't even know what that dark line is. Well, that dark line ended up being a moat. It was literally a ditch filled with water. And we're already in water up to our thighs. And he's trying to get to this line on the map, and we got there, and it turned out to be a moat. It was like 30 feet across, maybe not that much, 15 feet across, and there's a wall. There's like an 8-foot brick wall or cement wall on the other side of this moat. And I remember being there with Linan, and he's like, what do you think, Doc? Can I cross? And I was like, no way, dude. And we're looking like, barely can see what we're seeing in front of us. And I said, man, that water looks deep, Linan. You said, there's no way you can get across that. When I must have turned around or looked back or walked away or something, but next thing you know, I hear a splash. And I turned back around, and Linan is gone. He's not there. And I walked up to the edge of that water, and all of a sudden, this helmet floated to the top of the water. I've got a picture on that blue spot. His literal desert camouflaged pattern helmet is floating on top of the water. And next thing you know, this arm busts through the water with an M16 in it, and his face emerges, and he looks at me and he says, help me, help me. And he's reaching out with his arm. I'm sorry, he didn't have his weapon in it. It was his bare arm and his fingers. And I literally froze. Hold on, I'm making sure I see you came in, TNC. So I'll tell you the truth. I didn't know what to do. I literally froze in my tracks, and I realized I can't do anything. He's too far away for me to reach. And if I go in that water, I'm going to sink just like he did. He had on his sappy plates, his vest, his weapon. He had ammo, the whole 9 yards. And that guy sunk. And within moments, within seconds, I'm sure, all of a sudden I see this M16 beside me, and it reaches out, and he is another Marine, and he had the whereabouts to put his M16 in Linan's hand and pull him out. And I was like, oh my gosh. And Linan grabbed a hold of that M16. The Marine started to pull him out. I grabbed a hold of that Marine. Somebody grabbed me from behind, and we had this line of Marines pulling Linan out of this moat. And we get him out. He is completely saturated head to toe. He's coughing and spitting, and he's laying on his side, and we're dragging him across the dirt. And that was near drowning out in the middle of Iraq. And I ended up having to try to make a decision. Okay, what do I do with him? And the answer was, I can't do anything for him except for to dry him off. I couldn't change him. We didn't bring any extra pair of uniform. We only took like an MRE for a 6-hour patrol into the city of the Heat, the city of Heat, and then out. You know, very minimal supplies we brought with us. And I just said, I told the Marines to keep an eye on him. He was able to get up on his feet and and continue the patrol. And I told the other Marines to keep an eye on him, and if he starts having any problems, to let me know, and we'll go from there. And they're like, copy that. And so we continued our patrol. And when I egressed out of the city, I don't know if you heard the beginning of this live stream or podcast, where, I was talking to you, I believe, that where First Sergeant, I was able to treat First Sergeant when he got hit by some shrapnel from something. And then shortly thereafter, once we were on the road going back to the FOB, word got to our truck. It pulls over on the side of the road, and I'm asking, what's going on? What's going on? Why are we pulling over? And they're like, somebody comes up to me and said, Doc, Linan is having problems. And I went, really? Where is he? He's not in my truck. Apparently I was in the wrong truck. I found out later. Something else for them to get me in trouble about. And he was in another 7-ton. So I went over to that 7-ton, got in the back, and he's literally hypothermic. He's got ice frost forming on his blouse, and his eyebrows, and he can barely talk, and he's shaking like a leaf, and he can't even hold his weapon. And I said, guys, we need to get him up front, like in the cab. And so we did. We got him up front. We took I think we got him down to his shirt, his Under Armour, and his PT shorts. And we wrapped a wool blanket around him, and we cranked the heater inside the cab of the 7-ton. And they put that corrugated tubing, they detached that tubing from underneath the dash, and we put it in his groin, and we just cranked the heater. And he was good to go back to the FOB. And then I eventually treated him back at the FOB and put a thermometer up his butt. And he was okay. He wasn't hypothermic, that in his core. But he definitely got cold and frozen. And I took him into Al-Assad base for a follow-up for any contaminated water that he may have aspirated and got into his lungs. And so I took him into Al-Assad base and waited for them to do a checkup on him there. And while we were there, found out that Robin Williams was performing at the theater at Al-Assad base. So we dove into the theater and we saw Robin Williams, and we got to see the quarterback for the Cowboys. What's his name? I'll think of it. And some other girl that was a model for some magazine or something. And so we actually got to hear Robin Williams do his performance at this theater while we were waiting for our ride back. And then eventually we got picked up by some Humvees and then got taken back to the FOB. So that was my story for Corporal Linan's near drowning. Unbelievable. Who would have known that I was going to experience a near drowning in Iraq? What in the world did he do? I still don't know if he did it on purpose or if he, accidentally fell in, or if he actually thought he could swim to the other side, or I don't know what he was thinking. But wait till if you didn't get that website, I'm gonna type it again. Illusion Dweller. I'm using an Xbox controller to type here. illusiondweller.blogspot.com. There you go. Yeah, I actually posted a drawing. I ended up putting a drawing together, a black and white drawing of Nan's helmet floating on top of the water with his arm protruding out of the top of the water. It kind of reminded me of a horror movie, when a zombie rises out of the grave and his arm pokes through the dirt. That's what it reminded me of, except in this case, it was water. Yeah, there's more to that story. We ended up getting buzzed by an F-15, a Marine Corps F-15. Apparently, somebody called in air support when we started meeting. What was it? A tank that was providing cover for us while we were in the city. They were from afar. They ended up running over an IED. It survived the blast, but that kind of started the excitement. So they called in air support to check it out, and an F-15 ended up flying over us at low level. And I remember, Safwan was with me, and it came so quickly and out of nowhere that it put us to our faces, wondering I thought a bomb just blew up or something. It turned out to be an aircraft that just came over super low level. And then I remember looking up into the sky. It was still dark before sunrise. Looking up into the sky where the noise came from, and he released his what do they call that? Those orange bursts, that they released for deterrent. That was quite the light show as he screamed past us. And and that's when we started kind of double timing and trying to picking up the pace, because apparently and then some other platoon ran into a car that wouldn't stop, and it turned out to be a bunch of teenagers that were just, they weren't there to, I don't think, to cause any problems, but they didn't know any better, and they didn't stop when the Marines told them to, so they opened up on them, and they ended up stopping and turning around and driving away. And during that whole interruption, I guess, is when First Sergeant got hit, and then I ran into him on my way out as I was running to the 7-ton, and then helping him into the back of the 7-ton. But yeah, that was, if you want to call that, excitement. And apparently, because of that patrol, people were saying that was enough to be awarded the combat action ribbon, and none of us ended up getting a recognition for that. So that was always a talk after the fact. After, we got home, people were wondering about, the combat action ribbon, and that troll um, gave those that were involved, the opportunity to get that. But I never did. I did end up getting a ribbon in the mail way after the fact by the 123 Marines. I forget what it was, but it's blue, and it's the medal, that you wear in your dress blues. Forget what it was, but yeah, years after, maybe a couple years after, I ended up getting a ribbon in the mail by the unit. But the CAR, the combat action ribbon, yeah, nobody ever got recognized for that. But that's okay. No biggie. It would have just been one of those woo factors if I had. So. Yeah, what qualifies one for? You must have got yours, if you were directly involved in an ambush. It was it was a good experience. All in all, it was an awesome opportunity to see how the war machine works. I'd always heard about that saying, or heard that saying, the war machine, but I was directly involved in it, and I got to see a lot of the cogwheels involved in, what takes place during war. The logistical part of it, the direct action part of it. I got to be part of a, what do you call it? I forget. This is part of my uh, testing. The Marine Corps getting your um, field medical FMF, Fleet Marine Force medal, which I didn't get, or ribbon, where you actually you end up taking a test where you learn more about the Marine Corps so that you can become part of the Fleet, officially part of the Fleet Marine Force, FMF. But it's what is the part of an operation when an operation is the whole logistics of putting together an operation? There's certain aspects of that you go through to put that together. One part of it is before the operation, where you meet all the high-ranking officers, commissioned officers, and enlisted officers get together, and they have basically a meeting. And I'm trying to remember what meeting is called. Like the night before, where they review everything, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then we dismiss, and then meet the next morning, and everything gets put into action. Oh, direct action. What I almost said it. Something action. That's the part I'm referring to. But anyways, I got to be part of that, which was kind of cool. I thought, I'm only an E5, but because I'm the corpsman, I got to get some information that a lot of people don't get to know. Remember I mentioned, you get sent out, you don't know. Direct action. Correct. Yeah. I got to be eyes and ears, part of that. And it was kind of cool. I don't have any security clearance, but apparently I need it to be part of this. Um, but most of the time, as most of the guys don't get to hear or see part of that. They just get to hear it from their, their E5 or their sergeant. And then he shares, what he was told. But it was kind of cool. It was kind of nice or first time, actually seeing some overhead projectors and, being cast onto a wall, in the maps and the whole diagram. And it was just visual stimuli, visual candy, as part of the deployment that I had never seen or been part of. I was blue side. They call it, you're either blue side or green side in the Navy. Blue side is the Navy side. Green side is Marine side. And you're attached to a Marine unit. Well, I was reserve, so I was attached to a blue side all my career. But because I got deployed, I went to Field Medical Services School, FMS, not FMF, but FM Sierra. I got attached. I was valuable enough. I got that, what they call the, I forget the name for it, the 8404 insignia as part of my corpsman. So that means I was able to be deployed with a Marine Corps unit. And because of that, therefore, I got assigned to the 123 Marines. And that's how I ended up in Iraq. Was because I volunteered to go to FMS school at Camp Lejeune one year in 2000. And I got that additional little insignia attached to my corpsman rate. So like I was saying, it was yeah, it was a good experience all in all. I got to end my career at war. And thank God I got home, and it was a relatively quiet deployment. For me, it was the most boring camp out of my life because unfortunately, although fortunately for me, that's what we thrive on. I thrive on taking care of people, and that's my job. So if you're not sick or injured, what do? I do nothing. So if nobody's sick or injured, it's a quite boring deployment. So actually, thank God for flu season during that year, because most of the people I treated were sick from the flu. It's the truth. And then we did have one shot up Iraqi bad guy at the very end of the deployment. And he was riddled with God, I don't know how many holes we found on his body. 12? He got riddled he lost the battle to some M16. And they brought him in still alive, although barely. He was still breathing on his own, but what we call agonal, meaning his brain stem was still operating and making him breathe, but he wasn't doing any purposeful breathing. But I got to try to stick a endotracheal tube into his trachea and breathe for him, which was unsuccessful because he was still alive enough to bite down and resist what I was trying to do for him. And the neurosurgeon got to try to put a central line, IV line, into his chest, or his subclavian, meaning right below his clavicle. There's an artery that travels right underneath the clavicle, and he was trying to access that to put a direct line, is what we call that, into an artery. I think he was able to establish that, but we were pretty much just practicing on this guy because he was dead, or he was dying. And I got to actually demonstrate for some of the oncoming corpsmen that were relieving us. It happened at the very end of the deployment, so I got to practice doing something that I was quite familiar with in the civilian world, been there, done that a number of times on sick and injured people. And now this was a first, to actually try to intubate a guy that was riddled with about 12 M16 rounds everywhere on his body. I mean, except his head. His chest and abdomen and his extremities were, penetrated by 7.62 rounds. Is that 7.62 M16 or is that 5.62? 7.6? I think it's a 7.6, right? M16. The AKs are 5.6, 5.56, right? Or am I backwards? M16 is 5.56 and AKs are 7.62. Let me out on that, Josh. I qualified with my M16 and my M9. 5.56. Which one is that? Is that AK or that's M16? That's M16, right? Yeah, the bigger round is the AK. Ah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome, dude. You know what? Again, Josh, I wish I had had an opportunity to do more operations with you guys. Even though you're in the Army, just out in the field. When I talked with a couple of my fellow corpsmen that were deployed out in the road for the 7 months, or at least most of the 7 months. And it was a different world out there for them. And I always kind of felt for them, because I wanted to be part of it. But then again, I didn't. But, that curiosity, I was wanting to know where they were coming from. So when they talked, I knew directly what they were talking about, what they experienced. And I didn't get a chance except for those foot patrols that I got to go out on. And I found that mine, that landmine or the vehicle mine, and the that action that we experienced out there in the city of Heat. So it was in a sniper patrol I went on. That was eventful, but I got to put, without going into detail, I got to put crosshairs on a Iraqi and was given permission to pull the trigger if I needed. I had a sniper actually give me his M14 and his ACOG scope and said, "How's your shooting, Doc?" And I said, "I qualified. I hold my own." "Why?" He said, he handed me his weapon and he goes, "You see that Iraqi up there at the intersection?" And I took his weapon and I found the guy in the white man dress that he was talking about. I said, "Yeah." He says, "Put the crosshairs dead center," or center mass. And I said, "Okay." And he said, "If that guy does anything to threaten my Marine," he says, "you think you can pull the trigger?" And I went, "Yeah, I think so." "Why?" He's like, "Just keep the crosshairs on his chest, and if you feel he's in any way gonna threaten my Marine," he says, "pull the trigger." I said, "Oh, I can do that." He said, "I'm a corpsman. I know what to do with him if I hit him." I asked him, I said, "Is your weapon zeroed?" He goes, "Don't worry about it. Just pull the trigger." And I went, "Okay." He says, "It's short enough." He said, "Whatever you're aiming at, you're going to hit." I said, "All right." Well, he never did anything and I never did pull the trigger, but I was pretty, I was like, "Whoa, this is cool." I think, I'll get him out of there by ground or air, one of the two. But he was telling me they were doing a vehicle stop at an intersection and they were assigned to provide cover, the snipers. and they were short a medic. So they came to me. It was my turn to go on patrol. So I got to go out with them for one morning, early morning, and then overnight, and we got picked up the next morning at dark the next morning by a tracked vehicle with 6 tires on each side, or 3 tires on each side of it, hot as an oven inside this thing, as they picked us up by what are those infrared patches that the Marines were wearing on their shoulders or on their chest, and they located them that way and picked up and drove us away from the hide that we were occupying. But that was my story I got to tell about when I got back to the FOB. They're like, "Was it, Doc?" And I was like, "Oh, I got to do this and this and this." It's a great time talking to you. It's time for me to hey, yep. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to shut up next time, and it's your turn to tell me a little more about your ambush, if you so choose to share a little more details about that. Or just field stuff in general. I'll ask you questions, and you can answer. Yeah, I miss talking with somebody. That's why I kind of started this channel, was hoping to do like an interview. Maybe if you're interested, Josh, in the future. Here's what the format it would be. This same StreamYard platform enables me to not only go live like I am now to the world, but I can do the same thing, but do it in private. So it's just, I would contact you, i.e. via email, and I'd say, "Hey, Josh, you think we can do that interview on this day at this time?" And we'd set up a time and a day, and then I will give you a link. I would give you a link like in your email, at that particular time and day, and you just click on it. It's a StreamYard link. And for instance, like right now I'm live, and if I copy and paste this link to this live, people can come up on stage with me. And I would do the same thing for you, except I would privately email it to you. I'm going to post it now. Not the link that you're going to use, but I'm giving you an example. I would send you a link like that. And when you click on it, you will come right up on stage with me. Actually, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you'll go what they call backstage. Your icon, if you're on a phone or if you're on a laptop, either one, or computer, your video will actually turn on your device, your phone or your laptop, and you will sit in front of your video, your face, and you'll pop up backstage. I can't show you because you can't see this, but you'll appear down at the bottom of my screen. And then if I click on it, you will come right up on stage, and you will either appear above me or below me or next to me, side by side, or I'm on top, you're on bottom, or you're on top and I'm on bottom, or you're on the left side, I'm on the right side, or I'm on the right side, you're on the left side. Whatever format I choose, whatever layout I choose to use. And you'll be side by side with me. But we won't be public. It'll just be a recording that I'm making privately. And we'll do an interview back and forth. And I'll ask you questions, and you introduce yourself and tell me a story about your deployment or something like that. And it doesn't need to be perfect. We can just talk freely to each other, just like we're doing right now. And what I do with that recording is I'll edit it. And I'll edit it and I'll take out all the downtime and all the, the stuff that isn't interesting, and I'll make a video out of it. And then eventually I can even send it to you and you can check it out and say yay or nay or change this or add this. And then once it's a done deal, I post it up as a video on my YouTube channel. And that's how these talk shows or these interview YouTube channels are made. They do the interview in private on the side, and it's edited, and then eventually it's posted. So yeah, you think you're game for that? I see you commented on it. Well, that's the whole purpose of me starting this channel, is in hopes that I can run into people. Unfortunately, I don't have social media at the moment, and I tried that at the beginning and it was working, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And I was hoping that somebody would come on board and help me out, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So, but I've learned since then about this ability to do this in private so that we can just put something together and then I can edit it after the fact and then I can post it as a completed video. And I went, oh, well, that's easy. The hard part is just getting people on board so I can, create interviews. So yeah, I'll as a matter of fact, Josh, if you want to, just for now, on my YouTube channel, right above at the very top of my channel where it shows my description, welcome to my channel, this is who I am, this is what my channel is about. You will see my email, an email option in my description. It's at the bottom. Just scroll down and click on view email, and you can email me, and we can start liaisoning that way and emailing each other back and forth. And then I'll think of a day and a time, and we'll get together one-on-one and figure out how we're going to put together a interview. Okay? So yeah, just grab my email from my description on the on my YouTube channel, and it directly is connected to my Gmail. I think I've got the Hotmail up there, but if you email the Hotmail, it'll get directly sent to my Gmail. So good to go. All right, Josh. Later, bro. Thanks for bringing back memories. That was cool. Hoorah! I like the last part. I don't know if you saw me my last time I had my Trump hat on. You may have seen that in my it's posted, the last live stream I did. Right on. Later. I'm out of here as well. I'm going to end this stream. See you guys. Thanks. Anybody else that's following or still listening? Sorry I didn't get back to you. Who was it? TC slots, and the rest of you guys. Love it. As you were.